I welcome you all. I see you all the time. This is your area. But Dr. Edozie, we also welcome you. You're part of this panel. But what I will do is to let you catch your breath for now and also charge your battery before we get back to you. Thank you very much. I welcome all of you. Dr. Yaga, let me kick off with you. Following Nigeria's commitment to being an early adopter of the FRS Sustainability Disclosure Standards announced at COP27, could you provide insights into the journey and progress made since this significant declaration?
Thank you very much. At COP27, like Dr. Ndidi mentioned, the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria led the pack to announce early adoption. We did not just stop at the announcement. We began to put in place measures to ensure that we walk the talk. We created a national stakeholders committee known as Adoption Readiness Working Group, which was formally inaugurated on June 6th, 2023, with a 3-day training building capacity for the adoption of IFRS S1, S2. And the National Committee, the Adoption Readiness Working Group, is made up of the assurance providers. That is majorly the Big Four. We have the regulators, my friend Saad Absalam, and other regulators, including the National Council on Climate Change. We have other regulators there. We have preparers. We have all that have one thing or the other to do with sustainability reporting. And the aim is to brainstorm, come together, and draw up a roadmap on how to have a seamless adoption of sustainability reporting standards as issued by the International Sustainability Standard Board. And last month, the ARWG met, had a 3-day retreat, and they have finalized the adoption roadmap, which will be exposing to the entire stakeholders, and everybody will know how to go about it. Before I take off, we have also on October 9 published a notice requesting for certain documents for what we call readiness test for early adopters. And that is where we are for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me come to you, Mrs. Awe. The IFRS in June 2023 launched the sustainability disclosures. And I also recall that in Dr. Edozie's paper, she referred to them, the IFRS S1 and S2. The Lagos launch was significantly supported by your organization. Maybe you want to talk us through what is happening around it now.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My organization is actually has its roots in another organization that I think may be more familiar. The name may be more familiar. It's called the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And I start from there because the Nigerian Stock Exchange, since the 2012-2013, joined an organization called the United Nations Sustainable Stock Exchanges Initiative. Because as far back as that time, it had seen that sustainability of companies was something that was important and had to be taken seriously, was something that had to be put in companies' DNA. After that, we followed it with like 3 events, including the first Nigerian Capital Markets Sustainability Conference, and then ended up with sustainability disclosure guidelines, which are still in subsistence. And we've continued to work with listed companies as well as our trading license holders, who are the 2 major stakeholder groups within our purview, to try and encourage them and move them along the path of sustainability. So with this background, when the International Sustainability Standards Board came into existence in COP26, it was very easy for us to realize that there would be a synergy. When the Financial Reporting Council became the first entity of its sort in the world representing Nigeria to state that it will early adopt those standards, again, the synergy was there. And we've had a very good relationship with the Financial Reporting Council over the years. And so it was coming home. It was a natural progression for us. So it wasn't surprising that we were a natural collaborator for the ISSB and the FRC, and that's what you saw in the Lagos launch. Prior to the Lagos launch, we had done some capacity building also with the ISSB and the SASB board, the FRC, to just basically build capacity around the standards, because it's one thing to have the standards, the important thing is you have to have the capacity to use them, and the standards are reporting standards, they are downstream, upstream, you have the strategy, you have everything that you do to be able to report. So I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Salam, while she was talking, she harped on the need for collaboration, and that's what I'm taking to your table. You know, collaboration with other regulatory bodies, both nationally and internationally, is essential for maintaining uniformity and efficiency in securities regulation. So could you shed light on 6 collaborative efforts and strategies in this regard?
Thank you. Let me start with the domestic environment. Prior to the establishment of the ISSB, the financial sector regulators under their umbrella body of Financial Services Regulation Coordinating Committee came together to develop some guidelines around sustainability and reporting on sustainability by regulated entities. And after developing that, each sectoral regulator now issued their own guideline to suit their own environment. So you can see under that umbrella body, already issue of collaboration has started. And then in 2021, IOSCO worked jointly with the ISSB to develop the standards. And in the process of doing that, SEC Nigeria, which is a member of the IOSCO, that is International Organization of Securities Commissions, it is an umbrella body of securities regulators across the globe, came together with other regulators from different jurisdictions, met in Egypt to look at the draft standards and revise them, and that led to us having the final version of the standards. And also that meeting in Egypt served as a capacity building environment for those regulators also to understand why we need to have those standards, what we hope to achieve with those standards, and then when they are rolled out, how do we go about implementing? Now, when the standards were ready but have not yet been launched, again, a body was set up, as Dr. Anyahara mentioned, Adoption Readiness Work Group, which comprised of the Financial Reporting Council, who are driving the process, other regulators, the academia, and then the issuers like MTN, Dangote, and so on, and then the exchanges also. Now, the work of that Adoption Readiness Work Group is to drive the process and ensure a seamless adoption process, which is what we are doing now. Now, SEC being a member of IOSCO, because IOSCO in July, after launch of the standards, IOSCO adopted or endorsed those standards. By endorsing the standard, it means those standards are now acceptable globally to be implemented by all issuers of securities across the world. So with that, it means all securities regulators across the globe have the work of ensuring that those standards are adopted and implemented and are complied with. So we are going to leverage on that cooperation within the IOSCO as a body to now develop and build capacity of our domestic issuers and other stakeholders.
We are having audio class, please. Thank you.
So
please.
We are going to leverage on IOSCO cooperation to now build capacity in our own environment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ndidi, are you still with us? Dr. Ndidi? Okay. Maybe I'll come to you while she's still charging her
I was on.
Okay, you're here.
Can you? Yes, I am.
Okay.
Not charging my battery.
You know, one of the things that I got from your presentation was Nigeria's commitment to the adoption of the IFRC sustainability disclosures. So why is this important, and how ready is Nigeria to implement this commitment?
That's a great question. Why is it important? These standards are important because it's the first time that we're seeing sustainability standards that are going to be mandatory and global, and that are geared to investors and capital markets, which is why the fact that Capital Markets Day today is focusing on sustainability and on these investor-focused sustainability disclosures is so key, because it builds the bridge between the relative data in terms of risks and opportunities and how climate-related and sustainability-related risks and opportunities affect a company's prospects. And by making that data more available and more accessible and more visible, helps to unlock capital flows. So what's very important about the ISSB standards, and why is Nigeria so exemplary in its approach, is first of all, you're looking at the three key regulators for capital markets, the SEC, NGX, and FRCN, working collaboratively together with others, together with preparers like MTN, to become standard setters, not just standard takers. So these are standards that we are helping to shape. Secondly, also, because Nigeria has stepped up first, it's at the forefront of also being able to receive access to capacity building support, knowledge sharing, and this is not just for sustainability professionals who are very important, but also, for example, last week we held a presentation for company secretaries across the world, and specifically also accountants who are overseeing financial statements, and now we'll be looking at the risks and opportunities related to sustainability and climate in that regard. What Nigeria has also done is it's set a best practice model in place. Notably, Nigeria is also now the vice chair of the African Association or a forum for independent auditors and accounting assurance regulators across the continent. So in other words, really leading the continent in terms of best practice as to how to approach the standards. What's also important is the GFANZ, and GFANZ, the Glasgow Financial Alliance of Net Zero, and it's not just about net zero, it's about overall climate-related disclosures. They essentially jointly control $130 trillion that have been dedicated towards and are very strongly linked to the ISSB standards. So there's a significant pool of capital that investors are directing and channeling in accordance with the ISSB standards. And again, by the Nigerian regulators and indeed also preparers like MTN taking the first step and deciding that they're going to lead the way, they continue to shape the way that these standards are developed and the way that they are also applied in order to ensure that sustainability-related disclosures don't just help in terms of better enhancing the risk profile of the companies and improving resilience, but also unlock the necessary capital flows. Maybe what I'll do is I'll close by speaking right now from Beijing, and earlier today when I walked across the city to get to the board meeting, I walked past a major crossing. And the major crossing, in spite of the fact that I was looking at approximately 200 cars moving at the same time, was entirely silent. And it suddenly struck me actually that most of these cars are actually electric cars. And we know that 20 years ago, China was nowhere where it is today. And China is indeed, in fact, one of the conversations I had was with the chair of 1,000 companies, 1,000 Chinese companies that are looking at the African continent and are looking at the ISSB standards as a way to connect the way that sustainability-related information on the African continent, and they were specific about Nigeria, is disclosed in terms of being able to channel their own capital towards entities that are better profiled to succeed, bearing in mind risks and opportunities of a sustainability or climate-related nature. So I think Nigeria is doing extremely well in terms of leading the way and stepping up, and in terms of embracing and charging ahead in terms of its leadership on adopting these standards in such a manner that we can deepen capital markets and improve capital inflows into the entities that drive our economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You see, one word that jumped at me from the four of you is adoption, and I'm probably taking that to you, Dr. Henry. The inauguration of the Adoption Readiness Working Group in June 2023 is regarded as best practice benchmark for other African jurisdictions. What notable accomplishments and challenges has the group encountered in its efforts?
Thank you. Thank you very much. The modalities for the ARWG created a very good, robust framework where other African countries are actually looking up to Nigeria, because we did not adopt a model where one regulator will sit and make pronouncements. We adopted a model where, like I mentioned, all relevant regulators, the preparers, the assurance providers, other relevant stakeholders come together and look at the best approach towards having a seamless adoption. And when you do such a model, you are invariably getting general buy-in, rather than sit down and push it out to all. And when we created that, for instance, the issuers like the MTN, the InterSwitch, the Dangote, they sat along with regulators to decide on the best approach. And when the group agreed, it becomes quite easy to adopt, rather than just push the standard as it is. And we are also creating some other modalities. For instance, advocacy. How do we reach out other groups and let them know why we are doing what we are doing? It's not just adopting standard for ISEC. The sustainability reporting standard is expecting you to say what we are doing. And therefore, we look at it as creating a corporate behavioral change that will enable us in Nigeria and the whole of Africa to easily get these available funds elsewhere. So I see it as a model, and we have been receiving requests from other African countries to showcase what Nigeria is doing and what Nigeria is doing well. In this case, we have also categorized the adoption into phases. Those who have done significantly well in sustainability reporting prior to the issuance of IFRS S1, S2, we looked at them and requested them to elect to be early adopters. So in this case, they are not being forced, they are not being mandated. So we are working with them, assisting the issuers to be able to get it right at the very beginning and always. So that makes it quite unique to my own feelings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Awe, there's a little bit of quandary here. Stakeholders are demanding more sustainability disclosures. And it is apparent that some companies are not doing so. How do you bridge the gap as a regulator?
Thank you. So I think for us at MGX RegCo, there are lots of tools in the arsenal of the regulator. One of the tools, I think the most extreme tool, is to say, well, you've got to do it and crack the whip. But sustainability is a DNA thing. It's not something that you want folks to just be ticking boxes, because it will blow up, and when it blows up, the entire market will have repercussions, because then people start suspecting the reports that come out of this jurisdiction. And so right now we have two main things we're interested in. One of them is awareness, and the second one is capacity building. So we're not interested in cracking a whip. We're interested in getting people that run companies to realize that this is something that has come to stay and it's not going anywhere, and that if they don't pay attention to it, the source, which ultimately is funding, will dry up. That's number one. Number two, once we get that awareness, and you need to get it toned from the top at the board level, once you've gotten that awareness, the second thing is, well, we don't have the capacity. We've never done this before. We've been doing financial reporting. What is all this sustainability reporting about? So that's the second place where we're engaging. Now, with respect to number one, we're collaborating. So we recently collaborated, and there might be people in the room who responded to this survey, on a survey with the Society for Corporate Governance, where we basically sent out to try and find out from companies, listed and unlisted, what's the temperature around sustainability, the understanding and ability to actually apply the standards correctly in Nigeria. That survey has ended. We're working on the results now, and we'll provide the results to the FRC, to the SEC, anybody that we feel will benefit from having those results. With respect to capacity building, we're working with stakeholders within the capacity building chain to try and have and provide capacity to our stakeholder groups. One of such capacity building we did with the ISSB and the FRC in June, where we took them through the SASB standards and just a general understanding of S1 and S2. When I come to, and my colleagues come to events like this, it's also partly to make the awareness, to project our voice using collaborations and platforms like this, and the capacity building as well. Thank you.
Mr. Abdulsalam, a lot of people believe that we live in what they call the gigabyte-infested world. Technology is here, digital assets are here. So how is SEC adopting its regulatory approach to accommodate these changes while ensuring market safety and investor confidence?
Okay, the SEC used to be, do I call it manual? Yeah, it used to be manual, but now our operations have shifted from manual to digital. Applications are received electronically, processed electronically, up to approval stage. For market operators who are seeking licensing in to operate in the market, prior to now, you have to travel all the way from Lagos to Abuja to attend registration interview or registration meeting. But now everything is done through virtual means. So with that, we are now shifting and aligning. And the Commission in the last 2 years is involved in IT transformation project, which is highly capital intensive, with so much funds being spent. We have really gone far with that project with the support of some development partners. Now, by the time we conclude on that transformation project, everything around the SEC is going to be electronic. So with that, we are now aligning with what is happening globally. And then you mentioned something about digital assets and so on. In 2022, early 2022, the SEC looked at what is happening around the digital space. We've been working to come up with regulatory incubation project for fintechs. Now that has come to fruition because we have started bringing in those fintechs into that regulatory incubation space so that we can now assess how risky are they before we can allow them to go into the market, so that we don't want a situation where somebody will just go into the market just like that and cause serious catastrophe. So we developed in concert with the central bank, with the NFIU, we sat together to come up with regulations around issuance of digital assets, digital exchanges, and so on. So a lot has been done. The regulations are there, the frameworks are there, and we have also received certain applications from people that have shown interest in all that. So with that, I believe we are towing along the path of digitization that will take us to the dreamland.
So you are digitally compliant?
We are digitally compliant because Operation Management issued a policy notice to all staff that henceforth no more paperwork, because for two reasons. One, we are becoming digital. Two, we are saving the environment. Paper is made out of wood that come out of falling down of trees, and that is creating a lot of environmental hazard. So by the time you eliminate or drastically reduce of paper, you are saving the environment.
Thank you very much. Dr. Nida, are you still with us?
I'm right here.
Okay, you know, one person that is very digitally compliant is you, talking to us all the way from Beijing. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. But one of the things I'm looking at is, why are these disclosures very important? And how can they help support market development in Nigeria?
So if I go back to the comment that was made by Teni earlier today, where he talked about, you know, being taken off the frontier and the consequences that that has, or if you look at it from the perspective of ESG rating entities or even credit rating entities, some of the times African companies and Nigerian companies in particular are blacklisted or given poor ratings because they don't have the data. And so this really is an opportunity. If you think about the ISSB standards, they are the IFRS sustainability standards, and they have now been endorsed, as was mentioned by the panelists, by IOSCO. IOSCO oversees securities and exchange commissions, including that of Nigeria, of 130 countries. In its history, the only other set of standards that have been endorsed by IOSCO have been the IFRS accounting standards, which are applied across 140 countries and almost every African country, and specifically Nigeria. So the fact that they have now endorsed the sustainability standards means that we're looking at mandatory sustainability-related disclosures that are specific toward investor use and providing the kind of data that investors are looking for in order to make investment decisions. And what's really important to Africa and to Nigeria specifically right now is to present itself in such a manner that it can unlock the significant capital flows that are out there. Look at the continent. It has 4% of global oil emissions, almost negligible. And it has so much nature capital that currently is not valued and is not actually captured in the books. So there's a huge opportunity here in embracing the ISSP standards that the regulators and some early adopters in Nigeria have already done, to continue to shape the standards and make sure that the standards can be applied without undue cost and effort by Nigerian companies, and also the global supply chains and local value chains and supply chains, that is the smaller entities that also need to disclose in cost-effective ways. The reason why it's so important that we're doing this on MTN Capital Markets Day is because technology actually has a critical role to play in terms of, one, being able to allocate, find that data, report that data, and do it in a way that the data is robust and verifiable so that it can be used by investors to allocate investments. So the prayer really is Nigeria will be a test case, will be an opportunity and an example of leapfrogging and leveraging sustainability-related disclosures that speak very specifically to the risks and the opportunities that are linked to climate and overall sustainability opportunities and risks, to unlock the capital that is required by the economies. I think that I want to applaud the regulators around the room for being so open and collaborative in the approach that they're taking to adopting these standards and implementing transitional reliefs so that it's easy for companies, or relatively easy for companies to adopt. I also want to applaud those preparers, those issuers, those companies that have stepped up first. And I will remember very vividly that in June, when the ISSB standards were launched, that MTN's chairman stepped up and indicated that they would be voluntarily adopting these standards, also because they want to lead the way and make sure that the standards are fit for purpose for African companies. And so the ISSB is listening. Nigerian companies are members of the advisory boards within the ISSB, and we continue to work on and enhance these standards, and more importantly also provide capacity building support, knowledge. And so it's a huge opportunity for learning, also for our younger generation who are very interested in sustainability and want to apply sustainability towards building new types of businesses, new types of jobs, also digital, but also green, that really create brand new economic opportunities that we so desperately need at this time.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Now the floor is open. We'll shift the conversation to the audience, both online and present here. We have our regulators in the room. We have our questions. You've listened to them, and even Dr. Ndidi is listening to us from all the way from Beijing. Please raise your hand. They'll bring the microphone to you. Do we have hands up? Okay, please.
Hi, my name is Farouk Mia. I'm with All Africa Partners based in London. I think everyone appreciates the importance of sustainability and everything that's been mentioned, but how can that be balanced with the extra administrative burden and the extra work that comes with this, particularly for markets which are, you could argue, in their infancy, for companies which are in their infancy, and as the CEO of the stock exchange mentioned, there's a long list of to-do other priorities. So how can that be balanced with sustainability? Thank you.
Did you three get the question? Please, maybe you might run it again.
Sure, sorry. How do you balance the extra administrative burden and extra work that comes with sustainability versus the infancy of African stock markets, the infancy of some of the corporates, and the long to-do list that is already present for African markets?
I'm sure Mr. Awe got that. Yes, okay. So can we take two more? Two more? All right. So, Mr. Awe, please can you respond to that?
Thank you very much. I think certainly there is a long list of things for companies to do as they prepare themselves to be attractive to investors and a host of other stakeholders. And I think that the way to think about it is to think about it from a long-term perspective. So the folks who want to invest in those companies do have a concern about what companies are doing on the environment, what they're doing about social issues, and what they're doing about governance issues. And so if you say as a company, I'm too young or too small to be bothered about that, you're just kicking the problem down the can. Because you will get to a level of maturity when you may need the type of funding that will insist that it wants to go into those issues. And so we always say to companies, start reporting something. And actually when you go into a strategy session and you look, you will often find that the company is actually doing a lot of things along these ESG lines, but because they are not reported, because they are not part of the strategy, they are left on the table. I know of consultants, for example, who have worked with hospitals. Somebody was telling me about working with a hospital in another African country. And just in the manner in which the hospital was separating its waste, that in itself was an environmental issue. But because it wasn't in strategy, it wasn't a data point, they weren't taking cognizance of it. The thing is that if we don't do anything, it's one of those things where if you don't do anything, the sources of funding will dry up. And so my own advice to companies around this is, yes, acknowledging that it is a burden, yes, acknowledging that there has to be proportionality. And I think when Ndidi was talking, she talked about NGX Redco being one of the voices on the adoption working group that is always saying businesses are in business to do business. They're not in business to report, or they're not in business to do a number of other things that may be necessarily important to a whole set of stakeholders. But they have to pay attention to these things. So the proportionality is important. The burden can be taken on when you outline your strategy and incorporate that strategy not as a separate strategy, but part of your general strategy, incorporating these ESG matters into it, and then you proportionally pace yourself to deal with them. But doing nothing is not going to work anymore. There's too much money chasing after impact. There's too much funding chasing after sustainability to ignore it. And very soon, especially if you check around the world, I'll just give this one last example. You remember when the data protection rules came out? It was when the European data protection rules came out that I think the world sat up. Well, the Europeans are also involved and interested in sustainability. So there's a coalition around the world now, the ISSB being the one that has the greatest influence around the world, but you have jurisdictional movements around this as well. So it is not something that anybody can ignore. And I think the answer is in the proportionality in which you deal with the issue. Tell your story and then keep to that story and continue along the journey. But not doing anything is disastrous and a way, I think, for a company to die. Thank you.
While you were talking, the two men here were raising their hands. They had perspectives on it. Do you have questions from the audience so that you can have that perspective? Okay. If you don't have questions from the house, you can share that perspective and then begin to have your... Okay. All right, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Ivana Osage, and I actually run an ESG consulting firm. I've been hearing a lot about the need for companies to do the sustainability reporting, and as Mrs. Awe said, that is something that is further downstream. But I think also we need to focus on the upstream side of things. So I always say to my clients that one of the good things about ESG is that it actually gives you a framework for you to manage the sort of issues that you're dealing with, especially at the board level. So my question is, what sort of messaging are we giving to boards to enable them to engage and drive ESG and sustainability at the board level so it cascades down the organization and we focus on the upstream side rather than just focusing on the reporting?
Okay, please, your final word, please.
Okay, thanks. The message we are giving to board, for me, is the tone at the top drives all the things we are doing. We are talking about ethical investment, we are talking about the planet, the people, and profit. That the board should not be looking at the profit alone. They should be looking at doing things today and conserving the nature. And that when they are thinking about sustainability, they are thinking about innovation. Innovation brings about a lot of issues, and they have to create the governance framework. If you are using the CMD pillars, they have to create the governance framework, and after the governance framework, of course, embed the sustainability issues, the ESG issues in their strategy. And of course, you look at the opportunities, the risks there, of course, set your targets. So the board drives all the things we are saying, and that's why even in the readiness test, the Financial Reporting Council issued on October 9, one of the first requirements is board approval. That the board has approved that you are going to do this. You can't do any meaningful thing without the board giving you the go-ahead. And we need to see it run down all the other things we are doing. And again, for me, we are talking about corporate behavioral change. Most times we look at profit without looking at the impact of our activities on the environment. And now, can we do it better and still make the profit we are looking at? Yes, we can. And that's where the innovation comes in. And you can't do it without the board driving it. That's my own take on it.
Thank you very much. Our conversation is gradually coming to a close. Our time is almost up. Any concluding comment? 1 minute.
Okay, so I will just make a comment to address the concerns raised by the two people that asked the question. Let's look at the cost benefit in doing things. Globally, attention is shifting to sustainability issues. What impact is your business making on the environment? What impact is it making on the society around your business? Be it your employees, be it the community you're operating in, and so on. How is your business being managed? Are you looking at your own interest, or you are looking at adding value to your stakeholders? So for investors to invest in your business, they are looking at how sustainable is your business. If you are not complying with the global standards on sustainability, nobody will do business with you. And at the end of the day, to raise the required capital to fund your business will be a challenge for you. So you have to look at, yes, it comes with additional cost, but what is that cost compared to the benefit you stand to derive when you comply and you now disclose? Because when you make disclosures, you say, oh, this is how I do it, this is what I have done, I have avoided certain implications by doing this, and so on. People will always be happy to say, oh, yes, your business is ethical, your business is compliant, and also let's look at what benefits companies derive from implementing international financial reporting standards. Your financials and your businesses becomes globally comparable. and you are speaking in the same language a company in China, in US, and so on is speaking. So look at all those benefits, and then I assure you will forget about the issue of additional cost. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to members of the panel. Yes?
This is me.
Okay.
This is Indy speaking.
Okay.
Called the Chief Value Officer.
Okay.
Partly because, you know, through sustainability reporting using the ISSB standards, you're also talking about how does a company create value? How does a company create value for its stakeholders, for the society, for the economy, and how does it use its natural resources? So in other words, what the standards do, and I get the point about, you know, the cost-benefit analysis and also being concerned, the concept of proportionality means that one is trying to implement these standards without undue cost and effort, and also taking into cognizance the skills, the capabilities, and the resources of the entities that are reporting. So for example, in the implementation of scenario analysis, you can actually start with a qualitative report and work your way towards a quantitative report, so that sustainability reporting is a journey. You don't report, if you're a smaller entity, in the same way that a larger entity reports, but principle-based, you are reporting and you are disclosing. We must also remember that we're becoming much more sophisticated in the uses of estimates. So rather than having to collect primary data, which is more expensive, you can actually apply estimates in order to report. The most important thing is to be able to provide data as opposed to leave a gap, because that data is critical for investors to make decisions, and also for you to be able to make projections. So ultimately, leveraging the TCFD pillars, which are governance on the one hand, the board's leadership is absolutely key in setting tone at the top, but secondly also strategy. And strategy involves the whole organization. It's not just the sustainability function, and also not the financial function alone, which now is leveraging its know-how of the accounting standards to now build in sustainability-related financial disclosures. The accountants are unleashed, but the whole organization is unleashed to help build a strategy for business resilience that is focused specifically on the risks that may impact the business negatively, or the opportunities that may unlock future cash flows, reduce the cost of capital, and attract new capital, so that you're reporting on targets and metrics that help you and that make it worth your while, so that the financial effects or the cost of reporting is mitigated by the potential that it unleashes in terms of business resilience, and also attracting capital flows, and also blended finance in order to invest in that business. So it's really sustainability-related disclosures, very, very much linked to being able to grow the businesses and estimate the business's prospects and future cash flows that are going to be impacted, whether we like it or not, by sustainability-related risks and opportunities. So to ignore that they're there is actually to damage us more than to embrace them. And just to assure you that because of the potential challenges and because it's a learning curve is the reason why proportionality has been built into these standards, so that they can be used by different actors according to their level of skills, resources, and capabilities. And so generally, we're all on a learning curve, and we all have the opportunity to really improve business resilience holistically, starting with tone at the top, but working its way through every single department within the organization, so that we're building strategically better prepared entities that are more resilient and also attractive to investors who are looking at the ESG lens and the sustainability factors as a key criteria to decide on whether they invest or whether they don't invest. And so not addressing the issue, which is a huge issue in Nigeria, of not having this data available is going to be detrimental. So the fact that we're a step ahead is a good thing. The fact that the regulators are aligned with the preparers in working towards this, the fact that policy is behind this, and the fact that it's a global phenomenon And one truly global baseline means that instead of reporting according to a number, and at the moment there are up to 600 voluntary sustainability standards, at least now we have a truly global baseline so that you can work with the ISSB standards and it's interoperable with Europe's standards, for example, so that if you're doing business with Europe, by embracing the ISSB standards that are shaped by Nigeria and by Africa, you are actually able to report according to standards that meet the circumstances that we're in and yet still comply globally in order to attract the capital flows that we're looking at.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And let me also say thank you to the panel here. Dr. Didi, we appreciate you. Thank you, Mrs. Aware. Thank you, Mr. Abdusalam, and thank you, Dr. Ayhaga. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience. Let's appreciate them as they step down now. Thank you.